Yeah, it started.
Started. Perfect. Vandana, you want to get started? I mean,
You mean I need to start? I
hmm.
need to. Okay.
All right.
Uh, yeah, it's a very good morning from Nerella and very good evening from the India. And I guess it's a good count. I never expected like 23 participants will join this time. Uh, yeah, maybe because of this topic, me also vibes. I'm not sure. Like, yeah, we'll start. Like, today's topic is going to be a kickstart your journey with AI driven development with MuleSoft Vibes. So, we are going to co host this MuleSoft meetup with Goa and Kadapa MuleSoft meetup from India. Um, yeah, I can start. Next slide. Yeah, they are like a forward-looking statement. This presentation contains forward-looking statements about, among other things, and a trend analysis and statement regarding future events, anticipated growth, and industry perspective, and our strategies, expectation or plans regarding product release and enhancement. So the achievement or success of the matters covered by this such forward-looking statement involves risk, uncertainties, and assumptions. So if any such risk or uncertainties materialize, so or if any of the assumption prove incorrect, so result or outcomes could differ materially from those expressed or implied by these forward-looking statement. So the risk and uncertainties referred to above include those factors discussed in Salesforce report uh, filed from time to time with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So including but not limited to our ability to consummate the pending acquisition of Informatica on a timely basis or at all. So our ability to meet the expectation of our customer, uncertainties regarding AI technologies and their integration into our product offerings. So this effect of evolving domestic and foreign government regulation, so regulatory developments and regulatory investigation involving us or affecting our industry. So our ability to successfully introduce new service and product features, so including related AI and agent force. So our ability to execute our business plans, the place of change and innovation, and our ability to compete in the market in which we participate, and our ability to maintain, enhance our brand. So this is forward looking statement. So next slide.
Give me one second. So, team, just giving you a quick overview of what all of this means is basically Salesforce is a publicly traded company, and please make sure you're making your purchasing decisions based on the generally available products and what's available out there. Don't take for whatever we are just saying. Okay, just make sure you're buying or making your decisions based on what's available, and then make your decisions, your organization, and make that call. Okay, all right. Moving on to the next one.
So next slide is about organizers and speakers. We can say moderator as well.
Mhm.
First one is Sravan Nerella. So he is the main speaker for today's meetup. So Shravan, you can introduce. Everyone knows Shravan already, but you can introduce yourself to audience so they can know more about you.
Sounds great. Thank you, Vandana. Um, hello, everyone. My name is Sravan Kumar Nerella. I'm an integration architect and a integration practice lead at K2 Partnering Solutions. I lead a MuleSoft Meetup Detroit. And if you have any exciting topics that you would like to discuss with me or discuss with the community, feel free to reach out to me. And I'm more than happy to schedule some time and do this meetups together. That being said, the next thing is I'm a huge AI enthusiast. If you have like something cool that you want to build and within the MuleSoft world or outside of the MuleSoft world, and that's related to AI, feel free to ping me. I'm more than happy to jump into the discussion. I'm super excited about AI and how it's actually working. That being said, I'm recently a MuleSoft ambassador of 2026, and I recently got awarded as an AI advocate, and a lot more things kind of came with it. All right. That being said, let me hand over to Vandana. Vandana, you want to go
Yeah.
ahead?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Shravan, for introducing yourself to audience. And Uh, I'm the moderator for this today's meetup is myself and Vinay Kumar. So my name is Vandana Gowda. Currently, I'm working in AWGCS. Um, I'm a MuleSoft mentor from past 4 years. I'm serving as a MuleSoft mentor, as well as I'm a meetup leader for the Goa and Kadapa MuleSoft meetup, as well as I'm a speaker for the. I spoke a lot of meetups, as well as I'm a blogger um, on Medium. So I usually write blogs for another integration. Okay. So if you have any doubts regarding, mainly I focus on MuleSoft IDP automation. If you have any doubts or any questions about MuleSoft IDP and automation, please let me know. So you can connect me on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Um, Vinay, you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. First of all, I just want to express my gratitude to everyone so that they taken time on weekend and join the session. Yeah. Thanks everyone for that joining the session. So myself Vinay Kumar, and I'm a MuleSoft developer currently working with Power Softwares, and from the last 2 years I'm serving as a MuleSoft mentor, and I'm certified developer for the level 1 and level 2. And yeah, hope we're going to have a good session with vibes with Sravan.
Yeah.
Yeah, over to you, Sravan. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And we also have like many community members part of our session right today, like Jay Janardhan and as well as one second. Let me just find the attendees. I believe I was seeing like Francis and as well as da, 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 a lot more other people actually. Can't see them right now. Can't identify them. But yeah, that being said, hi to everyone, and let's get started with today's session, I guess. So, today's session, we're going to do a quick everything about AI. So, that being said, we're going to start off with talking about AI evolution. Then, we're going to talk about the Mule AI agents. Then, we're going to see how the whole MuleSoft Vipers actually work. And then, we're going to do a quick demo of all these sessions. And then, we'll take in questions and we're going to do a quick wrap up. All right. So, that being said, the first thing, AI evolution. So recently, everyone is talking about AI, right? Artificial intelligence and how it's kind of like taking over the development and how it's actually like enhancing the productivity and everything as such. So, but first, let's kind of go back a bit and see how this whole AI actually has evolved. So this kind of evolved into four different stages. Stage number one is basically we call it as perception. In this idea of perception, basically all it did was just understand the data. What do I mean by understanding the data? Meaning, like, I just give some kind of data, it needs to classify the information. Meaning, like, let's say that if I'm saying something, is it something like, is it positive or a negative? Is it a sensitive? This is something we call it as a sentiment analysis. And then we used to do something like identifying a person, basically, like saying, like, hey, here is a picture of a particular person or a animal, and then I want you to identify them. And this is exactly how the perception actually happened over the period of time using machine learning. Basically what happened was using the data and then training that we have provided, the AI was able to identify and classify whether a text is positive or negative, or the image is basically like a human or an animal, or it could be like something else, you know. At this perceptive stage, it kind of just did was understand what was going on. The next thing that kind of literally answered one quick question, that is, what is this? That led to the next big thing, which is like forecasting and recommendations. Based on whatever the information that I have so far, what am I actually predicting the next thing could be? You know, this is where we have seen something like completions. Like when you're writing something, you're getting some suggestions saying like, hey, you know what? Maybe you're trying to write this one as next step, or it could be like something like you have watched these kind of videos in the previous or in the past. Now, how would you like to try this particular video? You know, this is something we call it as a predictive AI. And then that kind of led to the next big thing, that was the generative AI. The generative AI, this is where things started to change a lot. This is where people have started building new things, or AI was able to create something new that was not existing. But here is the thing, it was still using the predictive and perception part of the AIs to actually go into the generative part of it. Meaning, if I were to say like build out some kind of an image of a cat, first of all, it needs to understand what a cat is. Then the next thing that it needs to understand is it needs to predict basically like what kind of a cat am I building. There could be like hundreds of them. And then based off that, it makes a prediction based off it. It needs to understand the traits of it, and then followed by build out that particular image. And that's exactly what a generative AI was doing. And has been like really, really great, right? And that led to one big thing. This is what we call it as agentic AI. This is what we are at right now. Here we are not just answering questions, we are not taking in just questions, we are taking in tasks. When I mention task, meaning like I just say something and agent or the AI was able to understand what's really going on, what does the user want, and based off that it makes calls to the external systems or make updates to the external systems, and then basically like work as a co-pilot to you. And then it kind of acts like a digital colleague with you, and it's being like a personal assistant for completing some tasks. That being said, I would like to give a quick pause up here. Any questions so far? All right.
No
I,
questions so far, sure.
perfect. That's good. So that leads to the next big question. What are agents? Well, before we jump into agents, one quick thing that I would like to point out. When we saw with AI, one of the key things that we have seen was chatbots. We keep chatting with the bots, and then basically it's able to handle some kind of key things. Initially, this used to be like pretty simple, meaning like when we said these things, like, hey, I want this customer order, and this is something my customer number is, or I want to perform a refund, and all of these things we were able to do it with the chatbots. But the problem with the chatbots is it was not able to get the full contextual understanding of what's really going on around it. Meaning, like, I could be all it's doing in the background is it's performing some kind of a rule based checks. Meaning, like, inside the full text of a message that you put, if you say like order and a written, it kind of understands the workflow as, okay, I need to trigger the order written, and things like that. So that's where like we are trying to like come out of it, and we are trying to provide a full kind of context to everything. Okay. And we are just saying that agents are nothing but a bot that's kind of able to trigger our workflows and perform the actions accordingly. All right. Excuse me. Sorry. All right. So that being said, if we were to define agents, everyone kind of explains this in a different way. But let me give you a quick breakthrough of how all of these agents kind of look like. Okay. One of the key things that happens is the first one is a prompt. What is the user's or the agent's task that it needs to perform? Second thing, instructions. This is basically we are saying like, hey, you are supposed to do this, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do this. These are the instructions that you kind of perform, or code of conduct that you have to perform. Imagine when you're joining a new organization, they provide you some kind of a handbook, right? That's kind of telling you what are the do's and what are the don'ts, right? That's exactly what the instructions are. The third one that we're defining here is the persona. What's their role? What's the agent's role? And what is it actually trying to accomplish? And then basically, we are also trying to get it respond in a particular way. Is it a help desk? So how it needs to respond in a particular way. If it's being like a positive person or a negative person, how you want to respond to a particular question, that's what agent's persona is in this case. So what happens in this whole agents? In the agents, we have like three main components. The first one is the memory. When we're talking about memory, this is where it kind of stores all the information of what happened so far. The second one is the LLM, large language modules or models. Basically, this is where the whole brain is. This is the one which is kind of controlling all the acts and everything. The third one we have is the tools. This idea of the tools is basically like interacting with the third party systems or any kind of an API, CLIs, whatever it is. Okay. And then based off all of these details, the LLM kind of builds out some kind of a plan, and using the plan, it kind of performs the execution. Okay. All right. So that being said, let's see an agent in action. One of them, and let me put this in something like a workflow, so you understand like how the whole thing works. Okay. So let me see. Let me show you this. First one is basically, let's take this scenario. Let's say there is something like a Slack message or a Slack agent that I have built. The idea of a Slack agent is it's as simple as just sending a message to a particular person. Send hi to Sravan Nerella. See, for a particular person like us, when we talk about Sravan Nerella, we kind of look that person inside our organization, and then we just send out a message as Sravan Nerella, and then basically send out a message. This is exactly the same concept that we're trying to perform within the Slack agent. So when the user says like sends out a prompt, something like send hi to Sravan, that kind of goes as a task to the agent. Now the agent's task is to complete this task of sending that message. So how does that actually work? It sends out that task to the LLM. The LLM is the brain of the whole thing. So first, what it does is it plans out the whole thing, what it needs to do to send out a hi to Sravan. First of all, if I want to send a message to Sravan, I need to get their username. So how do I get that? That's one. The second one is once I identified that information, then I need to send a message to that ID. And what's that message that I have to send? Hi. That's the text. So that's the context. So now what happened is the LLM actually break down the task into two things. One is like identifying what it needs to do. Second thing, what it needs to do when it's once the username is identified. Now we take this information and then we jump onto the next thing, which is the tool execution. Now, when we're talking about tool execution, meaning like we're interacting with the third-party system. In this case, we are interacting with Slack. All right. So the first step, what we want to do is what's the username of Nerella in Slack? I'm going to pass it to this tool execution. And here I'm going to make an API call to Slack saying that, hey, give me the username of Nerella. And then whatever the response the tool actually returns to us, it kind of passes into the LLM analyze. Or this is a second LLM, or it could be the same LLM that you're using. What this does is it just checks for one thing. Is the tool success or a failure? If it is a success, that means whatever the information that I have, it's kind of retrieved. If I didn't get the right set of information, I need that information to be like used back into my planning mode to understand like what went wrong. Okay. So that's exactly what we're doing. Is the tool success or does it have required information? Once that information is done, the next question is the task done? When I mentioned task, the main task is to send a message to Sravan. Is the task done? No. In this case, what it does is it goes back and then adds that information, whatever happened so far, as a history in the memory. Now this memory is passed back to the planning again. Now, based on the new set of information, what are the steps that I have to do next? The next step is identify, send a message to that particular ID. That basically goes to the tool execution again. And then the tool execution leads to the analyze, and then it checks again, is the task done? Now, only when the task is literally done, that kind of sends out a response and then stops the agent. And here's a big problem with this whole agent process. There is a huge possibility the evaluation that you're performing as part of the planning or the analyze that could go wrong, meaning like it could lead into something called as an infinite loop without ever stopping this. And this is exactly where we kind of put the maximum number of iterations that we want to do so that it kind of prevents from going further down the road. All right. Any questions on this so far? So far, I'm not seeing any.
I'm saying no questions, sir. Sure.
All right, cool. All right, so whatever I've just described this whole process, this is what we call it as React agents or re and act, reasoning and actions. So whatever is happening is you're kind of reasoning what really happened so far and then basically acting based on it. Okay. And that being said, let me jump on to the next thing. Within MuleSoft, we have like so many ways of building this AI to agents. Okay. For one, we can actually build tools. One of the biggest way we can do that through is something called the MCP connector. The next thing we can do is something like building out agents and then basically making them communicate with each other. And that's what we can do with A2A connector. Then we have the Einstein connector, which is the LLM kind of a thing, and the Agent Force connector, that's a Salesforce part of it. And then we also have a Mule AI connector that enables you to like build all of these building blocks together. And if you want to go nitty gritty details, you can also use something like inference and vector connectors as well. And MuleSoft is kind of like giving you all these tools to build all of these agents and AI related tools in a much, much faster way. All right. The next thing, excuse me. All right. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the Mule AI agents. These are the things that are actually provided to you out of the box. All right. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is the MuleSoft vibes. And today's session is completely about this vibes. Okay. And initially it used to be called as the dev agent. And when we talk about agent, think of the whatever the agent workflow that I have mentioned earlier. Okay. So that kind of helps you in seeing like how the whole vibes is working and you can actually make the changes as needed in the future. All right. So the next thing that we have is something called the documentation generation. This is something part of the AnyPoint exchange. I will show it to you. All right. The third one is intelligent document processing. Whenever you have like these unstructured data sets, like a PDF or images, we take in that information and identify the core attributes of it and then give it back to you as a response in a structured format. And that's what the IDP agent does. The next one we have is something called the diagnostic agent. This is something new that recently came up. The idea of the diagnostic agent is whenever your application fails, instead of you going through the whole logs and trying to figure out what went wrong, the diagnostic agent performs this analysis in the background and then gives you the right set of information for you to perform next steps. Then we have the connector builder. This is where we kind of like use the AI to build the custom connectors for your actual applications or your integrations. And in a similar way, we have like so many other AI capabilities that are enabled within our MuleSoft, that are AI gateway that's related to your basically like controlling what kind of LLM you need to use and things like that. Then we have the agent fabric. This is enabling you to orchestrate your agents and then communicating between the tasks and everything like that. And we have a number of other capabilities that are coming in pretty soon too. Excuse me. Let me give a quick pause up here and any questions so far?
Yes, Shandu, we have one question from AI Tech actually. You can find out in the chat Q&A. So he's
All right.
asking like, yeah, how do we determine maximum number of iteration, the
Mhm.
task which is given or involves multiple small steps, which is kind of dynamic depending upon the task we have given to the LLM.
Good question. Really good question. So this is something that we can actually see it in two ways. One of the ways that I kind of work with is basically like one tool at a time. I mean, one action at a time. First, I generate the first step. I kind of perform the action, and then I kind of go about like doing the whole steps back to back, back to back, back to back in a recursive faction, recursive way. Okay. So doing so, what happens is based on the task complexity, we kind of define the maximum numbers. So let's say that if I'm sending a message to Slack, in this case, we are not doing much of a steps. That would be maximum 5 steps maximum, right? Or if I'm doing something more complex like a code gen, in this case, we have to identify the limit of what you're trying to do and then basically define that information accordingly. And this is kind of like always depends on how your agent is kind of configured. And you don't typically this is something like a lot of times we kind of set it at maximum at 20, and then we will let the users kind of guide them whether they want to use it further or they want to stop it. So currently the ideal number is 20, but please based on your agent's complexity, make your decisions. I hope that answers your question. Cool.
Yeah.
Any other questions? uh, all right. All right, that's good. um, Good question, by the way, AI Tech. Yeah. All right. Moving on. Now let's jump on to the big part of our whole demo. That's basically wipes. We're gonna do heavily. This is something like the AI agent that enables you to do the whole development process for you. All right. Or you're kind of assisting the agent in building something. All right. So let's start with it. So before we start, what are we going to cover as part of today's demo? In our demo, we're going to start with something our MuleSoft API lifecycle. This is something has been the fundamentals of the whole APIs, how we build it within our MuleSoft environment. The first one we do is design. The second one we do an implement. Third one is basically we do the management. As part of the design, we kind of build out an API specification and then we publish it to Exchange. And then basically we kind of get a feedback from the business users, and followed by we do the validations and update the API spec in a iterative process. Then, whatever the API spec that we have published as an API specification, we take that as an implementation spec, and then we do the building processes, building the whole integration for it. And then we do write something like an unit test cases or put some kind of postman collections for it, right? Once the whole testing and the whole thing is done, we deploy it into our Anypoint platform, and then we kind of secure it, we deploy it, we kind of monitor our application, and we troubleshoot for any kind of errors that's coming in, and we essentially are doing something like a management. All right. So this is exactly the life cycle that we're going to walk through today. Okay. And in this demo, in this whatever what I'm going to show you, I'm going to start off with something like how do we set up with the Anypoint. Sorry, how are we going to set up with the MuleSoft vibes? Okay. So for setting up, the first one you need is the Anypoint Code Builder. This is basically an extension to your Visual Studio Code or Cursor or any other AI tool that's built on VS Code. The second one you need is a basically Salesforce account. Third one is your Anypoint platform, and then followed by we're going to do a quick check of the whole thing. Okay. So in order for this process, I'm going to show you how I actually set up this. Um, the MuleSoft vibes within our application. So let me just go. I just created some developer account up here. And then I also created a trail account for my Anypoint platform. I'm just going to refresh here. And I am logged in. And you can see that. Cool. So the first thing we can do is we will set up like our Anypoint MuleSoft vibes. In order to do that, first of all, we're going to click on your settings. We'll go into our access management. Excuse me. Second. Click on your Salesforce, and then basically we have something called Enable Agent Force for your Anypoint platform. Click on Accept, accept your conditions, click on Accept, and then followed by you have something called the Add Salesforce org. Click on that. Once you do that, basically it will guide you towards the steps what you need to perform. The first one it's asking you to provide is the tenant key. This is something that you can actually get from your Salesforce. All you have to do is click on Settings, Setup. I'm going to go into within the quick find. I'll search for MuleSoft, and then click something called the Anypoint Platform Setup. That will bring you to up here, and then click on Complete Connection. Copy this value that you are seeing up here. That's the tenant key. Paste it up here, add, and then basically it will identify your organization name and what is the name that you're going to use to identify this particular organization. Trail Salesforce org. Click on Add, and now what happened is you have successfully added your Salesforce connection to this one. Now, whatever the organization key that you have identified, this MuleSoft provides, copy that information, paste it part of your Anypoint platform, click on Connect. And once you're done with it, you are done with the very first step. That's basically like connecting your Salesforce and then the MuleSoft environments. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go into Einstein up here. Click on Einstein setup and check that Einstein is turned on. If it's not, please turn it on, and that should help you with the next steps. All right. So now that your Anypoint platform is set up, click on close and then refresh. Now what you should happen is you should see like the next set of options being enabled up here. Click on like enable for this one, continue, and then enable for which organizations you're trying to enable that for. Save the settings, and then basically I'm going to enable all the settings for the time being. Let me just go click on save, and that's all. And that's the end of the setup for Salesforce and MuleSoft at this moment. The next thing what we're going to do is we're going to go into our Visual Studio Code. I hope you guys can still see my screen. All right. One second. Let me just log out for a second and then basically log back in. So the first thing what you're going to do is you're going to go into this extensions, and then you're going to search for Anypoint Code Builder. And then you will find something like an extension pack. Click on install on this, and then basically you will have that the extensions enabled part of your Anypoint Code Builder. Now, once that's enabled, all you have to do is just click on this button. Sorry, you know what? The best way is like just click on this one, click on allow, and then it will prompt you to like click on open the external website. Click on open. Log into your account. I'll click on login. Now, once done, it will actually prompt back saying that it will use that information. Click on open. Now you will see that your account is actually connected. Once you're done with it, you will see the Anypoint MuleSoft vibe should be enabled up here. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 minute. Let me check if I missed something. Give me 1 second. Did enable everything. Cool. Let me add the permission endpoint code builder. Oh, forgot to add these two. Sorry, you have to add the permissions of like your endpoint code builder and as well as Mule generative AI capabilities. Enable that.
Yeah, someone asking the same about the permission things, like what we are going to give for the Salesforce and access management.
All right. Uh, I hope this one helps actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me just. Hmm. What did I miss up here? I think I missed. Did I? Didn't I add it? Try again. Let me check if I missed something in here, but sorry, Einstein. Did I miss something for you? All right, that's fine, I guess. For the time being, I'll just let me just log back into the other account that I have, and let's just continue for the time being. Give me 1 second. Maybe it's just all right. So essentially, what would happen is you would actually see like something like the vibes being enabled like this, and then basically you are good to go with the next steps. All right. Let me just go back up here, and that's the setup part of the first part. So the next thing that we're going to do is basically like designing an API specification at this time. The idea of the designing the API spec is basically you're just providing the prompt to the AI or the vibes to actually tell like what you're trying to build and what are the endpoints that you're trying to build. And basically it takes up the tasks of writing the whole API specification for you. Currently this currently the vibes supports like writing the API spec for like open API specification, raml, async API, or the grpc. This is the latest support that I kind of recently came up. You can actually use it for that. So what I have done is I've already like put together a small video of like how the whole vibes actually works on this. So here's a quick demo of it. So all I'm going to do up here is 1 second. Let me just all right. So what I'm going to do up here is, first of all, I'm just going to click on the vibes, and then I'm going to provide a prompt saying that what I'm trying to build. I'm trying to build a raml specification for a Salesforce system API, and it performs a series of actions or tool calls, and then basically writes out the full API specification for you. Typically, this whole process takes about like 1 or 2 minutes to complete the whole thing. And it also completes by writing the whole thing and then writing a documentation or a README file for the whole thing. Once the whole thing is done, it kind of also publishes the API specification to your exchange. Again, this is something that you have to like provide as a prompt. Once you provide that as a prompt, that actually it will start working for you. All right. Any questions on this one?
Yeah, I'll take it now. Sure.
Okay. All right. So this API specification, once this is actually built out, you can actually like see this whole. It gives you a comprehensive summary of what really happened, what are the actions it took, and the validation status and everything. Again, it will actually apply like a security policies or authentication mechanisms that you have mentioned part of your API specification. So if you mention something like as part of your prompt, I want to secure it basic using a basic authentication, just prompt it and it will take care of it. And in a similar way, you can set it up for OAuth 2.0, JWT, and all of those things. All right, cool. That being said, the next thing that I'm going to show you is once your API specification is published into your Exchange, one of the key things that a lot of people miss doing is writing a documentation or a complete summary of what really happened. So here's how it actually does it. So once we have enabled Einstein part of our Salesforce org or within our MuleSoft, what happens is you will see something called as within your Exchange, you see something called a generate documentation. Once you click on this generate documentation, it will utilize all the details that it has part of your API specification, and then it will generate a comprehensive document of the whole thing. You can see like what kind of authentication requirements are provided, and as well as the base URL environments and detailed explanation of each one of your endpoints and how to call them and what is a possible response that you get. And some people feel like reading through the documentation is much more convenient, much more easier, and this is how you actually kind of provide that documentation. One of the small drawback with this Einstein documentation is you don't have control towards like how this documentation gets generated. It has a predefined rules, and then you will just utilize them. And right now, as you can see, I didn't provide any kind of prompt. It's just a click of a button, and that's all. So that being said, let's say that I want to write this whole documentation in a particular format. And in this is where what will happen is you might have to use something like GitHub Copilot or Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, or any other third-party LLMs. And then you just provide a prompt saying like, hey, I want to generate a documentation, and here is my API specification that I've built. Write a documentation in this particular format. And it generates a specification, copy the details of the documentation, take it, and then just paste it in your documentation tab up here. All right, those are like two ways you can actually do. So the out of the box is much more convenient. Just click on like click on generate documentation, and it kind of provides based of the best practices that Salesforce has set up for this. All right, any questions?
So we have one question from Sailalita Shah.
Yes.
So she's saying is she has created one ramel to the vibes but not able to publish to the exchange. So just throwing the error like invalid asset even though she's provided the correct one. Yeah.
True. So yes, this is one of the common errors with the wipes. So the first time when you're generating the project, if you have some kind of uneven setup with the anypoint code builder, or it's not able to generate the API specification within the right project set, you will start running into this particular issues. So one of the key ways that I kind of rectify these things is basically like going back to your anypoint code builder. You can create something like an API project. Sorry, let me just go back up here. You can just go into your anypoint code builder, click on design API, and then basically set up your project name details, create project. Typically, the wipes takes care of creating this whole project for you. Sometimes if it doesn't do that, you might have to you have to stop it right there and say like, you know what, create it with the ACP, so that it will actually provide all the right set of details. And then you can actually be able to publish it as an asset into your exchange. I hope that I hope that helps. Um, all right, I don't see any response in there, but I hope
Yeah.
that's it. Again, most of the time the vibes takes care of it. Sometimes it doesn't. You have to be the person guiding it towards what needs to be done, doing it. All right. Okay, moving on to the next one. This is the big part of the whole development life cycle for our APIs, right? So the development, what really happens within our development is we kind of like take the API specification from published in the exchange, we take that in, and then what we do is we start to write the whole implementation logic, flow by flow, right? Instead of us writing it, what we can do is we can actually provide it to the agent wipe saying that, hey, we already have this API specification published in exchange, I want you to pick it up and then perform the implementation of the whole application, setting up all of the details. So in order to do this, what I will do is I'll go back to the wipes again, and in here I'm going to provide a prompt saying that using the published Salesforce API within the exchange, let's implement the API with all the defined best practices. Again, these best practices, what we are talking about, this is something that you can actually configure it part of your code builder. Within your wipes, you have something called a button, like something called as uh, this one up here. The mm, You have something called the rules and workflow button up here on the right, the third button up here. Click on that and you will see something called rules, workflows, and hooks. Rules are the one where you actually define what are the rules that you want to apply part of your implementation logic. So, for example, before you start writing anything, I always want you to check. You have to reuse the assets from the anypoint exchange. Check if this asset already exists. If it does, reuse it. I'm telling like how it actually needs to check that. The next thing is implementation standards. When it's writing the whole API implementation, I wanted it to follow a specific pattern. So you can actually build your API endpoints in a multiple ways. One of them is basically like just creating without the API kit router. Sometimes the LLM kind of takes that decision. So to prevent from that happening, what I'm saying is, hey, you need to use the API kit router. And then I've mentioned like what are the naming standards for my connectors and how I'm supposed to write it. And then followed by the configuration management. While you can write your properties in multiple formats, I can just force it to say like, hey, you know what? Use YAML instead of properties. And whatever the properties that you're defining, make sure it's in a YAML format. And how do you actually keep it proper? And I wanted all the configurations in global.xml and all the details like that. I keep defining each one of them. Once all of these details are defined, what happens is this will act like something called as an instructions, like I mentioned earlier. And whatever the prompt that you're providing and the instructions that you have provided takes both the details and then it will start applying both of them together. So let's see that in action right now. And then basically I'll start. Keep in note when you're actually running this API implementation, it does take some time. So sometimes it takes about like 5 minutes to complete the whole thing, or sometimes 3 minutes. It depends on your complexity of your API specification. All right. So let's say that if I'm just implementing one or two endpoints, this is like pretty much that should be done within like under 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes ish. But if you're doing something more like a 10 to 20 endpoints, it might take much longer than what is anticipated. All right. So here's one of the things that I would like to point out. So notice that once the whole once the API implementation is done, what it does is it will automatically try to build the project. If the project actually fails, what it does is it takes the information what happened so far and then basically takes that as an input, and then it tries to like update the details as needed. Sometimes what happens is even though you provide the right set of details, it may not be able to figure out what went wrong. And this is where us kind of we have to come back and then basically make some minor adjustments to your API specification. Again, this is not a perfect, but basically most of the time it kind of fills up all the details that you need and then basically completes the task for you. After this whole thing is done, the next thing what we will do is we kind of write your unit test cases. One of the key things that I forgot to mention, this is one way of doing that's through the MuleSoft vibes. Of course, you can utilize something like Cloud Code or ChatGPT Codex. But the thing is like with the MuleSoft vibes, you actually get the whole thing in a production ready format most of the time. Sometimes it might miss. Sometimes you can just have to point it out. All right, cool. So the next thing that we're going to do is test case generations. Let me just go back up here. So inside this one, what we're going to do is we're going to just say like, what are the test cases that we are trying to generate? And we're going to define all the details of what happened. And once I provide the set of details, what will happen is it will take your input source code as an implementation source code as basically a reference. And then followed by it will start triggering each one of your endpoints and see like what is the mocking point of it. And then basically it will generate a test case for each one of them accordingly. And let's just give it a second. So notice that once the test cases are generated, it runs the MVN test, and then basically it will start running the test cases in the background too. So everything kind of like runs by itself in this case. And if there are any failures, it takes back again these details and then basically restart the whole process again. All right.
Sure, on regard one question, like someone is asking, is LLM free? Like that. Do you have any answer for that?
LLM is uh, in this case, if you're talking about MuleSoft vibes, it uses the Einstein in the background. Anything with the MuleSoft vibes is basically free at this moment. You can start using that information as long as you're doing within the Salesforce, Salesforce changes. And it does not impact your Einstein credits in any way possible in this case so far. I hope that answers the question. All right, I'll take that as yes. All right. So the next thing what we're going to do is again whatever I've shown you right now, it's basically like just showing you the units part, but you can also generate something like a Postman collections in a similar way. Meaning like whatever the API specification that you have, API implementation that you have, you just provide it as a prompt, and then you can ask it to like generate a Postman collection. In order to do this, all what you can do is you can actually go into your manage MCP servers, click on settings, marketplace, and you have something called the Postman API tools. You can click on install. Using this information, it will take that as a reference to build your API Postman request as well. All right. Again, you can actually configure multiple MCP servers. Right now, one of the advanced workflow that I typically follow is basically like custom rules, or one of the thing is custom rules. The second one is basically like connecting multiple MCP servers. The reason for multiple MCP servers is because when you go into Salesforce, we most of the time build something like custom fields. And each organization has their own set of custom fields that they have defined. And some of them are required for creation of the particular object, or some of them are not. Possibly they kind of work as an enhancement. When you're building these API specifications and API implementation, having this information as a context would really, really help the vibes to actually act out and then build the whole application accordingly, right? And for that reason, what I do is I typically connect to my Salesforce organization using the Salesforce DX server. And doing so, what would happen is I enable the metadata API. So whenever my Vibes is about to start building the whole API specification, first it goes back and checks in the Salesforce what are the required fields. And based off that details, it will start building out the whole API specification. All right. Excuse me. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do right now is the third part of it. Once you have your API specification, you have built out an implementation. You have built implementation. Afterwards, you have written the test cases. The next thing what we can do is we can deploy our API specification. Deploy your API application into your runtime manager. In order to do this, before we do this, first thing what we typically do is we create something called the auto discovery ID. Typically this kind of goes about like clicking on multiple actions and then going into that particular section. Instead, what we can do is we can start asking Vibes. And in here, all I'm going to say is let's create an API instance and add the auto discovery ID to the project. Once I do this, in this case, it's just a prompt. Once I provide that details, it will start making some tool calls. And using that information, it will start updating the details accordingly within our Mule project. Notice that it actually created as an API.id, since as part of my rules, I've mentioned that whenever you're defining a property, it needs to be defined like this. And you can actually see like it actually updates the API ID within our configuration as well. Cool. So once the whole thing is done, it will give you a brief summary of like, hey, here is the API ID that I've created, and here is the instance label that I've set up for it, and all the details that you need. All right. So the next thing what we're going to do is right now we are able to create the API auto discovery. The next thing what we can do is we can also apply something like a rate limitings as needed. So in here, what I will be doing is next I will say like, hey, let's apply a rate limiting policy of 15 minutes per minute. Sorry, 15 requests per minute. So you cannot make more than 15 calls for each minute. All right. So once I click on once I provide that details, what it will do is it will go ahead and start making the API calls and apply the policy within our AnyPoint platform. All right. So if you were to go back to your API manager and you click on API instance and refresh, notice that the Salesforce system API is existing in there, and you can see the API ID is available. And that should be like typically matching with the API configuration that you have up there. You see that? And then followed by, if you go into the policies, you will see the rate limiting being applied there as well. You can click on the edit configuration and you can see like I mentioned like 15 requests. So it says 15 requests per minute. And that's how the whole managing of your API actually happens. And this means it's not just like what you're trying to do is just applying your policies. Now you can also do multiple other things like checking through the logs through AnyPoint monitoring. You can just say like, hey, I want to monitor the logs for like, I want to see like past 10 logs of what really happened for this particular application. It goes and fetches that information. The next thing is if you want to deploy your Mule application to CloudUp 2.0, you can just say like, hey, I want to deploy it to the CloudUp 2.0, and it will take care of deploying the whole thing for you. All right. So what we have really done up here is basically we are using something like a MuleSoft vibes to design, to develop, test, and then deploy our application, and as well as manage our application. All the 5 steps within the vibes environment. Um, that being said, any questions?
So far, no questions. So if anyone has any questions up to this part, so please let us know in the Q&A.
Yep. 1 second. What we can do is let's enable everyone to talk right now, Vinay and Vandana, so
Yeah,
that
sure.
we have people talking about. They can directly ask questions as needed. Okay.
Let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So everyone joining in. 1 second. Let me just enable everyone.
Yeah, we got one question from Francis actually. So he's asking like, those rules that you wrote, are they part of code builder?
Yes, they are part of Code Builder. You can actually write your own rules. These are custom rules that I've written actually, but you can actually set it up by yourself if you need it. So all you have to do is just click on the rules icon, and then you will find something called the global rules, and then you can actually click on add, or you can actually write a workspace specific rules as well. Within here, you will just type in the rules name towards like what the rules are going to be. For example, let's say that I'm working on Salesforce. I'm just going to say Salesforce rules.md. Again, all the rules that we are defining up here, they are markdown format. So it's kind of like once you write them, and it will actually create something called A4D rules folder, and inside that it will track this all the details in there. So the next time you open that project, it's much more easier for the whites to understand what are the rules that you're trying to set up and everything like that.
Cheers. I thought you'd added some extra ones.
Yes, you can add the extra ones too. Yes. Yes, Mohammed.
Hooks. Um, Apart from rules, we can also see that there are some workflows and hooks over there. So what are these?
Yes. So just like how the rules actually work, workflows are basically like before you perform this action or the vibes to actually perform something, you can set up some kind of a rules for this. For example, I have set up something like a repo workflow. All this one does is before a project actually starts, I wanted to create something like a separate, sorry, before my vibes actually takes a session and start the process, I will define a workflow mentioning like, hey, before you do it, make sure that Git is initialized part of this project. Second thing, I want the all these changes part of a new branch, something called vibes slash the feature that you're trying to build. So what happens is whatever the changes that the vibes is actually making, it does not impact my actual code. So you can define some kind of a workflows like this, and it will follow those workflows. And then the hooks is basically like you're defining at specific points of life cycle. If you want to perform and if you want to trigger another workflow or anything like that, you can define it part up here. And you can see like this, like the custom, the ones that they actually provide right now. On the task start, on task resume, on task cancel, on task complete, and other details like that. So let's say that I want this whole my workflow to start when the task is started. I'll just click on task start, and then basically I will just mention like what it needs to do. I will provide the details up here. That's all. Currently, I'm only using it pretty minimal at this moment, but yeah, I
So
hope that helps. Go ahead.
yeah, we got one question from Anu. So basically, she's asking like, we can do the CI/CD deployment based on this vibes.
You can trigger them, yes, but again, I would highly recommend you to test it before you kind of do it as a separate action, rather than putting it part of the work. The reason for that is most of the times the vibes, whatever the code that it's generated, it works. But there is also a most probable way of like failures too. Meaning like it could stop in between saying like, hey, you know what, I'm not able to complete the process. Things like that. Just to avoid that, what I would do is I would ask it to complete the task and then basically check, make sure that the whole application is running, make sure the test cases are properly generated, and then followed by make that call towards I want to deploy it. And I want to make that call towards whether I want to trigger the workflow or not. One of the things is, if you're feeling very confident that the vibes is kind of performing what you're asking, more than happy to do that. Yes, you're more than welcome to do that. Yes.
And I hope this answered your question.
All right. Any other questions?
I
All right.
think I'm seeing some people has raised hand. So, do you have any questions?
Yeah, yeah. Let's start with.
Mo-
Let's ask them to talk. So it's much easier.
Yep.
Mohammed, please go ahead.
And what about Git integration? So it can
Mhm.
also like commit my code and push and all perform all Git operations.
You can. Yes, you may.
Okay,
But again,
right.
make sure that before you're pushing it, you review the code. Okay.
Sure,
That's
right. And
one. Yeah.
okay, right. And one more question, like, what about like parallel tasks? Like, can it like if we give a requirement like okay, like create this experience API, this process API, and this system API, so it can,
Mhm.
for example, system API it can prepare and then deploy it to Cloud Hub and then use that URL in the process API and then create a process API and deploy it and use that API URL in the experience API, like kind of
Mhm.
uh,
I like
this you
your
mentioned,
question.
right?
I really like your question, Moment. So that's one of the things that I was actually like looking into the other day. So the idea right now, it does not support parallel executions. At least to my knowledge, when I was trying, I was not able to do it. So and the second thing is, you might have to open like multiple windows and try triggering it. But the problem is, all of them are kind of essentially connected to your same account. So parallel executions may not work for you. So it's like you might have to be going sequentially, meaning like first complete this, second do the system sorry, first complete the system API, then process, then followed by experience. And then once you're done with all of these and you have your API specs created and they're deployed into your exchange and as well as your runtime manager, then you can ask the wipe saying that, hey, update the URLs based off that, and it will take care of it. Again, make sure that you're kind of going through in a sequential manner. Whatever vibes that you're seeing right now, it will work for a lot of times. But the thing is, these parallel executions are not there yet, at least to my knowledge. I hope that answers your question, Mohammed.
Yeah, thank you. And
Yeah.
just last question, like, what is like performance or its quality if you have like a very complex kind of transformation data weave requirement?
Uh, so it is kind of fine so far, Mohammed. Sometimes I might have to jump in to make some adjustments, but most of the time it's kind of generating a proper data weaves. Yes.
Okay, thanks a lot.
One more thing. Again, I would not always stick to the vibes or Chat GPT or Claude or any kind of AI tool out there. It's always like there should be a human in loop, making sure that whatever it's generating is always correct. Okay, because whatever it's generating, according to its context, whatever it's generating is correct. But when we are actually seeing it in action or as part of our knowledge, it might have the gaps. So it's always a better idea to like do the review with yourself first before making any kind of updates. So when we are talking about vibes, I had like the lot of times what happens is I just prompt it and gives me the proper data view, proper implementation, proper specification. That's great. And there are some scenarios where it didn't work for me. So that's where this whole thing I would really, really say have a human in the loop. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Next. Yeah, no problem. Thank you. All right. Next we have Madineni Sailata.
Yeah, Sravan.
Hi.
No. Hi. And what my question is, sometimes we have to modify some data view logics, right? In the
Mhm.
middle. At that time, how can we use these MuleSoft vibes to update only small logics and all these things like only data view mappings we need to do, right? That scenarios we have to be faced.
Good.
How
Good
can we
question.
do that in vibes?
Yeah. That's a beautiful question, actually. So, as part of your when you're actually writing your rules and everything, when you're doing a prompt, you have this something called as an add context part of your vibes. You can click on that and you can just select like which file you're trying to make that change towards. I can just say like, hey, you know what, I'm working on this one and I have this particular file.
Meetup.
Um, I have it right now. Let me just let me just pick one of
Oh, Vada. I
uh,
don't know that project and
We are mute, Sridhar, if you are not talking anything.
apart from
um,
such pain.
actually, Vinay, can you mute her? If you don't mind? Perfect. Thank you. Um,
Sure, I just want to add one more question to here. Like, so is there any kind of debugging options we have here? Like, if you want to test something in middle of the while running or something.
uh, could you explain further, like what kind of debugging you're
So
asking?
suppose if you are some writing some logic, like if you are doing some kind of debugging, right? So in middle of that, we're going to update some data and we do some enhancement and validations. So this kind of feature we're going to have. We are. Is it available with Vibes?
Uh, Sorry, I don't follow Vinay.
Oh, got it.
One second.
So,
Go ahead. Sorry, I apologize. Sorry, I misunderstood. Maybe I didn't
yeah,
understand it properly. My bad.
got it. So,
Could you repeat
so
that?
is it, do we have any debugging features for this Vibes?
Oh, no, not as for the vibes. Like you cannot pause in between and say like, you know what, is this working or not? You cannot do that. But you have
Yeah,
ACB for that. Any point code builder that has the debugging functionalities and everything, right? That should take care of it,
got it.
right?
Got it.
But yeah, no, you cannot pause it in between and ask it to debug. No, it doesn't work like
Got it.
that.
Yeah. Thanks.
Like I mentioned earlier, think of this whole thing as an agent workflow, right? So you perform an action, it needs to observe what really happened, and then it needs to perform that action again, right? So it kind of goes in a loop of like performing that action and the react, reasoning, action, and basically like checking everything's looking good. And then it repeat or recurs through this whole process again and again until it has a final solution, right? So
So that
you cannot pause it in between saying like, hey, you know what, now if
yeah,
I can provide some new data set and then try working on it. So while you can add it as part of your tasks, but I think it will most of the time what it does is it will add it to the task list, but it will not do in the between of the whole process.
got it.
All right.
So in that case, so that we can consider for like complex case, we consider this would be difficult, right? For complex cases, if we consider Vibes, like I can say,
Like I didn't understand.
like if the application has the frequent changes in between. So
Yeah, but
yeah,
the
go
application.
ahead with the questions. Like I can explain after. So,
Sure, we can come back to
yeah,
that. Yeah. Um, One quick thing. Sorry, I'm not able to find a project right now on my desk right now. So what I will do is I'll just create a simple doc, data weave, and then basically I'm just going to put up here.
got one question from Anu that about the accuracy. So
Uh,
the
one,
first time, yeah,
one second. Let me just complete this, and we can talk about that. Okay.
sure.
So let's say that we have something like this one. I believe it was Sailata earlier who was asking the question. Yeah. So in this case, what you can do is you have this test.dwl file, right? You can go into your vibes and you can provide it as a context towards that particular file. So what you will do is you will just say like, hey, you know what, I have this file called test.dwl, and here is the change that I want to do. For example, I can say like, hey, add couple more. Let's say that couple more Salesforce fields, and then basically I will press enter. And technically, what you're doing is I'm just providing it a context towards like what I want to do and what is the update that it needs to do. So notice that it will actually like see whatever the details that I have provided, it goes ahead and then starts adding the details to it. That's all. Right now, all it did was just update one single file, as you can see there. Right now, all I just said is just focus on this one, and it focuses only on that. All right. All right.
Yeah. But
Does,
for suppose for get call and patch call, we know, for example, I'm saying
Mhm.
for get call and patch call, we need to update like some condition, some um, in get call, we need to update like response mapping. We
Mhm.
have to add some condition for one field.
Okay.
In that scenario, we need
Uh-huh.
to open only that file, right? That response file we need to open and uh, add like prompt. We have to add this so and so condition for that.
True.
Like
Yes.
we have to.
Yes. Again, it's not about complex or a simple use case in this case. If you're specifically focusing AI, I mean, asking AI to update a specific file, all you have to do is just point it to that particular file and it should typically take care of it. And again, don't feel restricted just by just saying that I will just use wipes. Okay. In most of the scenarios, chat gpt Claude can also help you with all of these things. If you have something like a GitHub Copilot license, something like this, I can also do the same exact thing up here. I will just select this file and then say like, hey, what is the change that I want to do, and it will take care of that too. Okay. But sometimes it might run into some issues. But most of the time the wipes kind of goes through that iterative process, and then it's trained on this data weave code and as well as the MuleSoft code, so it has a better knowledge about all of these things and it can resolve those issues early. Okay. um,
And and
Go
is
ahead.
there any chance to validate the certifications, client certifications, like through MuleSoft webs?
I am not sure, meaning.
That means we will check, right? We will before adding certifications, we will
Mhm.
validate those certifications, right? When it will expire, and those details we need to validate, right?
Oh, yep, yep, yep. Oh, so basically, these are like some custom rules. Again, we are talking about right now. So yes, you can define them part of your workflows, and then you can actually get them working. Yes, before adding any kind of certificates, you can do that. I've seen people who actually have done this. So for every mule project that they do, they kind of build out some kind of a self-signed certificate as part of their workflow. And then basically what it does is it will automatically generate that certificate and add it part of the code as well. So you can do some kind of custom rules like that. Again, when you're doing those things, you have to define the command that you're trying to perform. And that's what goes under your rules. Okay. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, but sometimes we need to convert that files also, right? Like CRT file to JKS, those
Mhm.
conversions, right? Those
Yes.
things. Do we do? I mean, can we do that through this?
Yeah. Again, that's what. As part of your rules. One second. Let me go back to the rules again. So let's say that your project, you have if you're doing this only once at a time, I mean, on a project creation per se, let's say, and you already provided the CRT file. All you have to say is add a particular rule up here saying that, hey, you know what? Before starting anything, three, and I can just say like certificate conversion. Okay. And I will describe like you will be provided with CRT files before starting the project or development. Make sure to convert the CRT to JKS format, and then using the key tool utility, and then I can just go follow by saying that use this command.
Okay, here we need to give the commands, right, to convert it.
I mean, if you feel comfortable, you can do that. Yes, um, you can do something like this, and it will work too. Again, at this time, before it performs this action, it will ask you to whether I'm okay to use this tool or perform this command, and you should approve that.
Here we will add, but how can, for suppose, I have the certificate, only certificate. I don't want to add it in code and all these things. I need to convert only certificate from CRT to JKS. I don't
Okay,
want it in code and all these things. At that time, how can we do that? I mean, how can
that's
we use
that's
this rule?
yeah. At this time, you're talking about an individual task, and at the time you don't need vibes to do it. You can do it directly through your command prompt and you should be done, right? Again, simple actions like these, if you kind of feel like it's part of your mule project and it is relevant, feel free to add it. Okay. If it is kind of like a one-time thing, you're doing it part of your project and you're not really up for a reuse in other projects or something, using it in the part of the terminal makes much simpler, right? Rather than repeating it across multiple times.
Yeah, we can use that. What my question is there any single step we can do? Like we can call that rule
Oh,
set.
okay, I think you're just talking about like as a workflow kind of a thing. Before you perform this, you do this. Uh, yeah, I guess you can. But don't you feel it's kind of a bit overkill?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but you should be fine. You should be able to do that. Okay, but I'm just saying, it's not a separate tool by itself. That's what I'm saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. I hope I answered your question, Silent.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions?
So as of now, no other questions apart
Mm.
from this.
All right. I see one question actually. In the chat. What is the
Oh,
accuracy? Can we achieve 100%? Ooh, 100%. That's a interesting question actually. Well,
yeah.
it does take time, I guess. Again, I would not say AI is like 100% perfect at this moment. Not when I mention like when it's not perfect, meaning like maybe it all depends on how the user prompts it, right? For example, let's say that I want to build out a Salesforce system API, and my environment has like all of these custom fields, and I didn't provide the right set of context to uh, the vibes mentioning like what it needs to do. In this case, the fault is at the human prompting it, not the AI, right? And in a similar way, where it could be like where AI is kind of fed with this lot of context at once, and it is kind of like not really sure what it needs to do now. This is a possibility too, right? So there are like multiple issues in both of them. Okay, so it's you cannot say like it's 100% perfect. It's essentially a tool, and it's kind of like trying to perform the best it can with the provided information and provided model it has. Okay, so 100%, yeah, it depends on the task that you're kind of working and the workflows. That's one more big thing actually. Yeah. All right, I see a few other questions in the chat. Any thoughts on Curitech versus MuleSoft vibes? Ooh. um, well, both of them are like great products. I've used both of them, and both of them are great products. um, it just uses like a different way of like they're trained on a different way towards like how it actually like generates the code. That's all. But rest of the functionality feels the same, okay, most of the time. And I'm not going to say like what is better, one is better than the other, while both of them can perform a similar action. So it all depends on which one you're comfortable with. And Jay mentions like Curitech used to be lot better than Vibe, but these days Vibe is on par. True. Yes. All right. Next question. Santoshi is asking about, can we control or modify config files, pom.xml files? Is there any security property files? How these wipes work? Ooh, great question, actually. Yes, you can control your pom.xml file configuration properties and everything like that. One quick thing, when you're working with the secure properties, it's your responsibility to like make sure how you're kind of triggering your properties. Secure properties, typically what it does is it has two properties that you have to pass. One is like your actual key. Second one is your actual property value that you're trying to do. And along with like your algorithm details and other algorithm details, and basically like a and basically using this information, it kind of goes through and encrypting your details, right? So are you feeling comfortable and giving these keys to your AI model is the question. But here is one of the things that I follow at our organization. I kind of mentioned to all of our team members too: do not use AI to generate any kind of secure properties. The reason is I want them to be like, I don't want that to be like exposed in any other way. That's all. But it's your organization's call on how they want to do it. But if your question is just if wipes can do it, yes, you can do it. But again, like I was mentioning in the rules earlier, you can just go in there, add that property as a rule in there, saying like, hey, if you're writing a secure properties, make sure you do this command and then you do that. All right. Next question. Have you ever got this thought that instead of mentioning what needs to be done through prompt, better I will do this, just checking? Well, a lot of times actually. A lot of times. The thing is like, sometimes if it's a very minor change, right? Let's say that I'm updating just a property, using something like Vibes or Chat GPT or anything, I kind of feel like they're overkill. They don't need. I don't need like. I don't need to waste tokens for something that small, and I would just go in there like and make that change. For example, let's say that I've written some kind of a small function in DataWeave, mentioning something like, hey, you know what? I'm going to write a small function which says like add. It takes A and B, and it just do A plus B. Now, instead of like now, let's say that my new requirement is to add something like a subtract. I will just do like a fun and A minus B. How much time did it really take for me? Very less. And if you are taking something like very complex, meaning like I have to implement a full endpoint altogether, going through the API specification, implementation, everything like that, yes, at that time I use Vibes, mentioning like, hey, you know what, this is what I want to do, and I go forward with it. I hope that answers the question. All right. Next, if we come across a situation where a complex Mule application which is running in prod couple of years and now some enhancements has come across, does MuleSoft help in such situations? Try this. Okay, can you or someone who tried this can share their thoughts on this? Well, I never had such kind of a scenario before. Well, if you are feeling like very sensitive about a production application and how it's actually working, and you are kind of confused towards, I mean, if you are willing to use it, more than happy to do it. But uh, if you don't have the confidence towards Vibes or any kind of AI tool out there kind of doing the similar things, it's your call, honestly. But personally, I didn't find any kind of issues so far. But it didn't really mean whether it's a production or a development application or POC one. All right. So, next question. Thanks, Ravan. But how wipes work in case of reading masking fields? Ooh, masking the fields is basically, I mean, MuleSoft actually doesn't really worry about like how it masks the information, right? I mean, especially within your Mule application. It's all about like how your, I mean, your data view when you're writing it, you're just masking it manually through a function. That's all. I'm really not sure like how it's kind of, I mean, your question towards like how it's masking the reading fields. Maybe if you can extend on that, that would be really helpful, Santosh. All right. Shall I use AI in Anypoint Studio directly without Code Builder and Salesforce account? Uh, I don't think right now the Anypoint Studio supports the AI or the any MuleSoft Vibes part of the Anypoint Code Builder. So it's only part of the Code Builder right now. It's not part of the Anypoint Studio. So if people are still working on the Anypoint Studio, I would encourage people to get started with the Anypoint Code Builder. Try it out, and based on your decisions, make the call towards like how you want to proceed further. Okay. That being said, one of the things that I've noticed, and a lot of places that I am seeing too, a lot of people are still working on the Anypoint Studio. They kind of feel that's much more stable than the Anypoint Code Builder. But again, Anypoint Code Builder is stable right now, and it is kind of working as it's supposed to. While some of the functionalities might feel like, you know, they're kind of like spread across, you will once you kind of get a gist of how the whole thing works, it's much simpler. Okay. Um, all right. I think, yeah, I think that's about it. Any other questions? All right. I think I've been talking for a while. I will let one and Vinay take some of the questions if possible.
Oh, I think you. I hope you answer all the questions. Yeah.
All right. Let me just go back again. Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining in. Actually, and yeah. Thank you everyone. Actually, I will be thanking everyone for joining in today and making this session a great place to interact and work with each other. Again, use of vibes is kind of it's kind of relatively new for a lot of things, but the thing is, it's kind of beautiful out there. Vibe coding is one of the key things that has been like growing for a while, and having this functionality within the MuleSoft, it's even amazing if you think about it, right? So I encourage everyone to try out with AI right now. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We are part of the MuleSoft community, and if you're not part of our Slack chats, feel free to join in, and it's free. Ask questions, send out the messages, and we are more than happy to answer these questions for you as soon as we can. Okay. And that being said, I also have like if you're ever feeling like reading about AI and what's happening in the MuleSoft world, I also write Medium articles just like Vandana does, and you can always follow me in there. And if you have any questions specifically towards like how these AI actually works, meaning like what does this vibe coding really means, how it actually worked, and when I was using for the first time, how it actually worked, and as well as like if you were building some custom connectors, how I use like AI to build them, and then if there is some kind of a new protocol that's yet to be coming into the MuleSoft, or it may be coming into the MuleSoft, I've written some kind of articles like UTCP as well, and things like if you want to build some kind of a custom knowledge bases, I've written articles on them. Again, anything you find interesting, feel free to ping me, and if you want to know something more, feel free to ping me. I can actually help you out with it. And that being said, I'll thank you everyone for joining in, and it's a great session. Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Sravan.
Vandana, thank you, Vinay, for inviting me for being the speaker, and it's a pleasure. And let's hope to do this more. Actually,
Yeah,
Sure. Will.
yeah.
thank you, Shravan. Thank
Thank
you
you,
for this beautiful meeting.
thank you, and thank you all from joining in from Goa, Kadapa, Detroit, Chicago, everywhere. Please, thank you very much. All right, let me stop the recording now. One second.